Welcome back, friends. Today we'll be activating our first Sheikah Tower off the Great Plateau, registering our first horse, saving Hestu's maracas, and trekking over to Kakariko village to speak to Impa. We've got a nice little cutaway here where I show off my beloved Zelda-related amiibo collection as well. I'd love to say that I don't always go straight from the Great Plateau to the Dueling Peaks Tower, and then directly along the path the rest of the way to Kakariko, but like I've said before, I'm a creature of habit, so let's get into it. Starting on the Great Plateau Tower, we'll start heading towards the Dueling Peaks Tower and then onwards towards Kakariko Village. There's an NPC somewhere who tells you that there's a legend from ancient times that the Dueling Peaks used to be just one mountain before a dragon flying over Hyrule split it down the middle, and I'm thankful it did because the path that it carved is basically a straight shot from here to the Dueling Peaks Tower. After we mark it on our map and start heading in that direction, using our fancy new paraglider to leave the Great Plateau for the first time, over the years I've gotten pretty good at timing the glider opening at the very last second to negate all fall damage. Once we land, I'm going to cut wide around the edge of the outpost ruins to avoid the bulk of enemies because I almost always get at least one game over in the first few enemies off the plateau. I honestly find the baby taluses so cute. Still gonna have to kill them for the loot drops, but they were just funny little guys. This guy kind of snuck up on me, but I did get the drop on him in the end. I forgot how satisfying it is to duck under a moblin's swing, and it's also super easy with their height. You just need to time it so you make your swing like a split second after he lines up for his. I am partial to a good two-handed weapon, and I think it's because I'm actually terrible at the combat in this game. Seriously, I think I went through my entire first playthrough without parrying once outside of the combat training shrine in Kakariko. So it was a long playthrough. This fight was embarrassing, to be honest. I got taken out by a couple of assholes with farm gear as weapons. No excuses, except maybe other than that no parrying thing that I was just talking about. I'm more of a brute force and speed kind of fighter, and truly, I am not ashamed of fighting dirty and sneaking around enemy camps to collect everyone's weapons before trying to pick them off one by one at a distance. Now we're gonna find a shrine right out in the open just before the Proxim Bridge, so we'll bang the Boshkala shrine out of the way before crossing said bridge. The wind guides you is probably one of, if not the easiest shrine in the game. You're basically going to stand on a very clearly marked spot on different platforms and jump straight off and open your paraglider to let the wind from the giant fans dotted around the room carry you to the next platform. No need to use stasis on the fans. They're placed just up high enough so that the stream of wind is directly above your center of gravity, so they won't push you around at standing height. Getting across the Proxim Bridge is going to bring us super close to the base of Dueling Peaks Tower, so we'll pick off a couple of Octos that were pissing me off, and then head towards the various Bocos leading up to the ramp at the bottom of the tower. After taking care of those enemies, we can use our fun stasis rune and that built-up energy principle to get this large slate out of the way so we can get to the chest underneath it. The gems are pretty valuable this early in game because they're the biggest money makers when you're starting off with nothing. I'm going to take out this sentry first before severing the chain of this floating lantern with an arrow. Usually when you see these hanging lanterns, there's an explosive barrel close by underneath it. So I get rid of all the red Bocos, leaving behind just this one guy. I then wildly overestimate my fighting skills and get murked once again. This time, I'm just gonna sneak by the sentry and climb up the back of the skull to go over the top to the other side, hopefully without alerting anyone inside. Goblins are pretty notoriously dumb, so it's really not that much effort to sneak by undetected. I saw this one guy and assumed there would be a handful more leading up to the tower, but I was totally wrong. It was just this one lone Boko and then a single camp up ahead. And I'm feeling pretty confident here, so I'm just gonna go ahead and try to barrel through them. I really thought I was so clever here. I dropped 2 of my lower level weapons to clear the inventory slots, and then snuck up on the camp to collect all of their weapons before alerting anyone, so they'd all be fighting barehanded. Except that there were 3 bokoblins, not 2, so I didn't have enough free slots to pick up all 3 weapons, and left one Boko able to defend himself. Not only that, one of the higher level Bokos grabbed the free club, just to make it a little more difficult. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure how I managed to get through that with a single seared steak and no game overs, but either way, we can now glide over to this little bit of rock that's jutting out towards the tower. I tried to do a cool bomb drop to blow up this rock while I was still in the air, but I missed it twice, so I just landed and blew it up from there to get the chest behind it. I actually very distinctly remember this scene during my first playthrough and how I felt when I realized that every single blacked out space on the map screen was going to be another piece of unlockable map. It was an overwhelming sense of how much game there actually was. I think the last video game I had played before I got my Switch and Breath of the Wild in 2019 was actually Super Paper Mario on the Wii. So being presented with the surprising fact that there's so much more game than expected was one of the best feelings I've ever felt. Now that we've gotten the map for this region, we can press on. You can pretty much just follow this path on your map all the way to Kakariko, hitting shrines on your way. And once we find the Ridahi shrine, we can head inside to complete the timing is critical puzzles, which are still blessedly easy. Timing is critical can be summed up pretty simply. Step on and off the switches at the correct times. This first puzzle is basically just a demonstration of how all the platforms work. The next two are only slightly trickier. It took me 2 tries to get this one, but I didn't have to start over at any point. I managed the last one in 2 shots as well, and that's it. That's the entire shrine. Now, we'll keep going the same way down the canyon because the Dueling Peak Stable and Ha Dahamar Shrine are right around this corner. There are spikes blocking the entrance to the shrine, so I go to the cliff slightly overlooking the shrine and paraglide down to the entrance. The spikes disappear once you finish the shrine, so you can get back out easily. The Water Guides is yet again a super simple starter shrine, and I think the same can be said for the majority of shrines in this area because this is where the game expects you to go first. In this shrine, we're basically just using Cryonis to make staircases and create stoppers in what is essentially a giant game of Plinko. Super basic stuff. I'm actually going to bother taking the time to get this chest up here because it seems simple enough, if a bit time consuming. Now, I generally don't mind these kind of puzzles, and this one is a shining example of that. It's simple enough to figure out without getting frustrated or having to try over and over again. Once we guide the ball to where we want it to go, we can just paraglide over to the monk instead of wasting time on the stairs. Directly outside the shrine is the Dueling Peaks stable. There are a bunch of weak horses in the nearby field if you'd like to capture and register one, which I do recommend. I, however, have an old Smash Bros. Link amiibo in my collection, so I'm going to scan in Epona. I kind of forget that amiibos exist until I come across the Dueling Peaks stable, and I remember that I want Epona. I'm going to cut this part out, because it's basically just 10 minutes of me struggling to figure out that the NFC reader in my favorite Pro controller isn't working. I have no idea why, but it won't scan anything in. So after I figured that out and sunk up a Joy-Con, I was able to scan Epona in immediately. I'll do a little cut here to show off my favorite Zelda amiibos in my physical collection. My amiibo collection started when I realized just how beneficial the more functional ones are in Breath of the Wild. I wanted Epona badly enough to track down an out-of-the-box Super Smash Bros. Link. In like a loose collectibles bin at a local flea market. So he is what started my love of collecting the Zelda amiibos. The second amiibo I bought would be this Twilight Princess Zelda, and I don't even think I knew what she scanned in. I only bought her because she was marked down to $2.50, also in a bin of loose collectibles at somewhere. I'm a sucker for a good deal. The next little buddy that I added to my collection was our little ocarina friend here. And he was one of the ones that I was actually seeking out at this point because at the time he was the cheapest way to get one of Link's like classic green outfits in game. I think I grabbed him on clearance at Walmart or something. Next up we have this little guy here, which is the Super Smash Bros. Toon Link. And I'm gonna level with y'all. I don't actually remember how or why I bought him, but I think he's cute. And I like the Sea Breeze Boomerang, despite boomerangs being like my least favorite weapon in the game. Now this figure is one of my favorites. This is the Zelda in the Loftwing figure from Skyward Sword HD. I don't know what, if anything, she does in Breath of the Wild, but she was pretty useful for the Skyward Sword HD playthrough, in my opinion. I actually just love this iteration of Zelda and think the detailing on her face and her bird's wings back here is just gorgeous. So this one here is probably my other favorite and has one of the coolest functions of any amiibo in this game. So this is the Wolf Link and Midna figure from Twilight Princess, and not only are they a beautifully crafted figure, you can scan them into Breath of the Wild to summon Wolf Link to help fight alongside you. I would mean, like, he does a handful of things with you, actually. He'll, like, help you scavenge and track down wildlife for you to hunt. He also sniffs out shrines if you have your sensor turned on. I'm pretty sure you can scan him in an unlimited amount of times per day unless he dies. And in which case, then you have to wait for the next day. Now, my last two amiibos are from Tears of the Kingdom. I don't actually own any of the amiibos from Breath of the Wild, despite the champions being at, like, the top of my wish list for years. So this one would have been a super pretty figure if I hadn't have received a defective one. So this is the Tears of the Kingdom Zelda figure, and let me get in a little closer. So her little sword right here, the Master Sword, is supposed to be resting in her hand, and for whatever reason mine is underneath her hand. I don't know, faulty plastic, but that one really pissed me off because she was supposed to be a push present from my husband when our son was born. Last but not least, we have the Tears Ganondorf figure. So I picked this guy up when he was $2 off at my local GameSpot because I basically couldn't afford not to buy him with a deal like that. So his in-game gimmick is pretty cool in my opinion. You have a chance to get some raw meat or a gloom weapon, and then there's a small chance that you will spawn an explosive barrel and a rock directly on top of said barrel. So when the barrel lands, the rock lands on top and detonates it, blows up everything in front of you, and knocks you on your ass. I haven't had that happen to me yet, so I suppose I'm one of the lucky ones. And that's my collection of funny little Zelda buddies. We have a handful of other amiibos in the house that aren't Zelda related, but nobody came here to see that, so let's get back to the game. Hi. I'm gonna go ahead and get Epona registered so I can access her at any stable. I seriously love this little Epona exclusive dialogue from the stable master. He asks if you want to name your horse and basically cuts himself off to be like, this is the horse of legend. She already has a name.
Oh. Eh? Hmm. Oh. Ah.
I'll go see Beetle briefly to sell off my gems before I go anywhere so I can buy some better clothes in Kakariko Village. I'll activate the Misko related side quest as well while I'm in here.
Oh. Ah?
Riding a horse from here to Kakariko and then later onto Hateno cuts the journey at least in half, and since I scanned in Epona, she already has max stats and I can just sit back and let her follow the path. Now, I had set up a really wicked shot of me swinging myself onto Epona's back mid-stride, and I actually executed it flawlessly. Only to realize that Hestu was right in front of me, and I have to jump off immediately after pulling off the cool shot. So obviously we're gonna help Hestu and retrieve his special maracas. I tried really hard to get at least one sneak shot in, and I thought that I had lined it up through the grass, but I was way off and just had to throw myself into the fray. So I find this fight really made it obvious what a good call to Chambara style fighting in Skyward Sword HD was. So basically, Chambara is an old samurai movie fighting style. It boils down to when many attackers take on a single fighter, and one attacker will go one-on-one with the fighter while the rest of the group kind of fades into the background until the attacker is defeated, at which point a new attacker will melt out of the background for his own one-on-one duel with the fighter. This style was utilized in cinema mostly before some genius somewhere decided to translate it into video games, and this worked especially well with older consoles because of the graphics limitations on how many moving characters you can have on your screen at once before your game starts to lag. In Skyward Sword HD, you very rarely get swarmed by a bunch of enemies at once, and I found it super helpful and would have loved some of that Chambara style here in this fight. Sometimes these wooden crates have useful stuff in them, but it's pretty hit or miss. This seemed like as good a time as any to see if I still have the shield surfing mechanics down pat. We'll line ourselves up with Hestu and jump off the shield to slam through his dialogue as fast as possible and skipping his little dance because I'm impatient and want my new inventory slot. I've always been a slut for slots. Now we can hop back on our horse and follow the path the rest of the way to Kakariko village. As much as I love the aesthetics and design of this village, we're on a mission, and there's an old lady waiting for us, so we should really keep moving. No, not that old lady. Oh. So these little Korok puzzles are pretty cute. You just match whatever's in the other offering bowls and then drop the same item in whichever bowl is empty. Here it's apples, so I'll dump one in the bowl and then take it back after I get the Korok seed. I'll snatch the ones that were here as an example too. It's like a reward.
Oh.
After we go past the guards, I'm going to slip under the foundation to grab a handful of stamella shrooms. After this, we meet one of my favorite NPCs of all time, Paya. You might call her one of Link's biggest simps. She has some funny exclusive dialogue if you talk to her while not wearing any clothes, but I honestly respect her too much to make her so uncomfortable on purpose. Here we finally meet Impa, who is thrilled to see us again, but she quickly figures out that we've lost all of our memories and have no idea who she is or what happened during the Great Calamity. She gives us a brief summary before revealing that Zelda left a message for Link, but tells us she doesn't think we're ready to hear it. To be honest, I'm not really sure what the game wants you to do here, but I always just talk to her immediately again to get my 100-year-old message. She wants to go in depth and tells us the entire story of the Great Calamity, but I'm getting kind of bored, so I'm going to skip it. Sorry, Impa. She also tells us to head to the Hateno Village Tech Lab, which I was already planning on doing, thanks.
Oh. 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 Yeah.
After speaking to Impa for 1,000,000 years, we can go out and back the way we came to take this little path off to the left that leads directly to the Taloneg Shrine, which is a combat technique shrine. There's not much to say about this one, truly. Grab the sword and shield offered to you and follow the instructions given by a creepy disembodied voice. I've played this game so many times that despite my unwillingness to actually use the parry mechanic, I have it pretty down pat after the first few swings. Gotta love the first flurry rush in a new save file. We get the Sheikah gear that we were given to fight the Guardian's sword, and an opal for our troubles. There's one more thing I like to do in Kakariko before I head out to Hateno, which is buy the rest of the Hylian clothes set and upgrade everything once after unlocking the Great Ferry that's just outside of town. I didn't notice that one of my cords had come unplugged, so I missed the footage of me buying the clothes and unlocking the Great Ferry. Sorry about that. But she's just past the shrine on the outskirts of Kakariko Village.
Ah!
that's a wrap. We've acquired a handful of new main quests and one side quest. We got the lowdown from Impa about our girl Zelda, and I always especially enjoy the scene where we meet Paya for the first time. I think she's one of my favorite characters, and her character development is just next level in the sequel. From here, we're going to continue on following the path to Hateno Village to speak to Purah and get our camera rune activated before we go off script and beetle all the way to the far end of the map. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you next time.